Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Our topic for today is the business value of design. So this is the second in a set of webinars that are being produced by Impact Signal. And I'm going to be your speaker for today. My name is Everton Lewis. I consider myself to be an accidental consultant. I started consulting during my time at IBM. I was working there for approximately 10 years. I was working on large enterprise implementations. And during that time, I really started to understand and start to think about how we could implement systems better. And one specific project was very influential to me. We were working with social workers. And during that time, we built a system for them. And then a couple months before we actually were scheduled to implement it in the field, we went into user testing. And then we learned from that group that what we had built wasn't working for their day-to-day experience. It was really clunky and it was creating a really bad user experience. There wasn't time for us to fix everything, but we did a few workarounds that made things better. And fortunately, a few years later, we were able to get some additional funding and we were able to actually go back to try and improve that system. And when we did it the second time, we really were more focused on getting that user engagement from the beginning. And we were working with the social workers from day one. We started to think about the regulations, the processes, and how we could actually change some of these things to make the experience better. And the second time was far more successful, and this was really impactful to me because these social workers were dealing with children in care, foster children, and we were trying to create something that would help to actually make it better for them in terms of tracking information and making sure that there were no bad outcomes for those children. So from that, I really started to really develop my area of expertise in product design and service design, and from that human-centered perspective. And some of the clients that I've worked with in the past include Moderna, BMS, RBC, TD, and all of these organizations, I've really worked with them to start to think about how we could become more human-centered as we roll out new products and new services. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the business value of design. And something that's really been in the news recently is ChatGPT. And with ChatGPT, it's something that's grown really quickly. I was reading something earlier today around their user base, and they said they've got around 50 million users per month, which is amazing for how long they've really been in the market. And as we look around and we think about the entire community of artificial intelligence, there's lots of different companies that are trying to grow in this space. And not all of them have come to the level of attention of a ChatGPT. And what we've learned over the last few years in our experience is that the choices and options for users have increased exponentially. It's easier today to create a product or service, and it's harder to actually get people to pay attention to that product or service. So when users make choices, they depend on two types of information to make those choices. They depend on qualitative information, so things related to their feelings, their attitudes, their mindsets. They also think about quantitative type of information. So they think about the benefits, the value that can be derived from a service, and then they try to make decisions on what services they're going to use based on both of these types of information. And what we know is that companies have been better at thinking about the quantitative pieces versus the qualitative pieces. So designers really excel at articulating reasoning about qualities. What are those things that are going to be important to users? So as we start to think about that, as a business, we want to make sure to have users for a long term that we can keep them engaged, that there's trust, and that there's attachment. And how, as a business, we actually create these things can be difficult to really articulate and reason. And that's where designers really excel. So as we start to think about trust, there's things related to authenticity, transparency, respect, gratitude. So they're fuzzy, but they're important, and you can design for them. And that's where we can really use the benefit of designers, design tools, design methods. Designers often struggle, however, to talk about the impact of those design decisions. So something that we can do is we can actually go out and do user interviews. And from those user interviews, we could learn that personalized offers are important. And we can actually have a design that has personalized offers, right, in terms of what our users see. However, if we're going to do that, we need to connect it to the business value and the KPI so that we can get investment to actually make those design changes. Something else we could learn is that from prototyping that multiple options are important, and we could actually impact our design to have multiple options available, but we need to connect it to the business value and KPI so we can get investment to actually make those changes. So the important piece here is really connecting what you're doing with the design to the actual project goal, the overall value and the outcome. And this is what we need to start to think a little bit more about as designers, how we can connect that. So here's a perspective on the business value of design. And in this perspective, we're going to talk about short-term and long-term timeline for results. We're also going to think about 5 different categories, and these categories can be applicable to public and private sector. And all of this is adapted from business value of design report that was produced by Frog. And what we've done is we've tweaked a few things. We've added a few things that we think are relevant from our experience. So let's begin with the first one of the 5, and this is really the speed to market. So one of the types of value that we can drive with our design tools, with our design methods, is the amount of time it takes for a company to go from problem statement to in-market solution. So that's something that we can put out as a goal of the project, and we can make decisions in terms of our approach and what we do so that we can actually help with speed. Something else that we can do as we start to think about the project and our goal is we could start to think about actually being focused on market reach. So creating new revenue producing opportunities with current customers or finding new customers for those current services. So that's something else that we can do. And from a public sector point of view, it's not so much about market reach, it's more about inclusivity. So having the biggest group of people able to access. So really being able to create and provide services to residents of varying abilities. Another potential value that we can drive from design tools is around our ability to collaborate. So a lot of these design tools, a lot of these design methods encourage collaboration. And by having those collaborative approaches, we can motivate and inspire staff, we can retain talent, and we can improve our team performance through that collaboration. Another area that we can start to think about for a project as we start to think about value is engagement and loyalty. So the ability to get customers to engage, form a relationship, and remain loyal to a firm. So this is something that can also be important and can be driven by design and design tools. On the public sector perspective, though, it's less about engagement and loyalty, and it's more about really getting residents to engage, form a relationship, and value the services that are provided by a government. So this is something that we would want to really aim for as we start to think about a potential value for public sector. And then the last one, the fifth category is, longer term, but if we can really start to think about a transformation. So if we can start to think about a very different business model, we can start to think about reframing our opportunities in a different way so that we can identify new opportunities, we can actually bypass our competitors into new areas and start to reset our customer expectations. So this is something that is difficult, but again, is a potential value that you can drive by some of these design methods and design tools. So the full picture, if we start to think about the full picture, we've got the 5 different values that we talked about. And then for each of these values, we can go on a next level deeper to start to think about what are the KPIs, what's going to be actually important for us to track. If it's speed to market, what are we going to track? If it's engagement and loyalty, what are we going to track? And what we've seen in our experience is that you need to pick one. You need to pick 1, maybe 2 for your project that you're going to focus on, and then connect your design decisions to that value. So that's something that you really need to think about, because that makes it a lot easier for people to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it also makes it easier for you to connect the value of the work that's being done. So let's go back to the example. What does this mean in action? So we talked earlier about, design tools, design methods that you could use. So let's go through again, user interviews. From that, we learned personalized offers were important. And then what we can do is we can start to connect to the business value of loyalty, engagement, and loyalty. And then from that, we can start to think about what do we need to measure to understand if this is really happening? And that would be churn rate. That's what we want to measure. For prototyping, we could learn that there's multiple options that are important. We can actually put that into our design. And then for us, we need to start to think about how do we connect that to the business. So for us, from the business perspective, it's speedier decision-making and then actually driving more revenue for the business. So that's how we bridge the gap between design and business. If we can really think about the value and then connect in that value to the KPIs and metrics that we want to drive. So these are a few resources that we used as we built out these slides. These were things that influenced our thinking early days. And again, we've added some things to that from what we've learned over our past few projects and our years of consulting. And again, my name is Everton. I was your speaker today. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, follow us on Impact Signal, and thank you very much.